What's up guys, welcome to Wasted Space, and we're back in Space Engineers with another episode of my Building a Fleet series. And I'm pretty happy with how the fighters have gone, so today we're going to move on to bombers, and we're going to look at the first of the bombers in my fleet, which is a light bomber. I'm kind of thinking we're going to have multiple bombers in this fleet, because you'll have things that are designed to, like this one is, take on some of the smaller targets, operate alongside the fighters, and maybe work against destroyers, frigates, the smaller scale capital ships. And then you'll have stuff that's designed to deal really quite dramatic damage to much bigger ships, and of course will intrinsically be much bigger itself. So we're going to kick off at the bottom of the spectrum, a fighter designed to be cheap, manoeuvrable, and to have projectiles and warheads that are also cheap and very easy to fire and produce. So what we have in front of me here is that ship, and I have to admit, I don't know what to call it. I kind of followed through with the design aesthetic that the Qatar had. So you've got this sort of spiky wing look that I quite like, and I've kind of followed that through with this. And as you can see, there is a vanilla one and a modded one. I started off with the vanilla one. I wanted to build this vanilla only because it didn't really need anything mod-wise. So I did so, and this is the vanilla one, but you'll notice there's a slight issue with vanilla thrusters at the moment. I don't seem to be able to get around. So hopefully I can demonstrate this live, but if I get in here and drive this ship forward, it's going to break itself. One of those thrusters on the back is going to go pop. There you go. I don't know why, there's nothing wrong internally with the ship, it just breaks itself as soon as you drive, and I'm seeing this as an issue with a number of my ships using, in particular, these large thrusters at the moment. So, for the purposes of this video, most of the demonstration is going to happen in the modded version, which, for all intents and purposes, is pretty much the same, other than this one is a little bit quicker. The other thing I'm going to do that's a little bit different with this video is instead of try and demonstrate this thing live to you, probably mess it up and generally not get so good footage, I'm going to switch over and I'm going to talk over some pre-recorded footage of me going and attacking some targets with it so you can really see what it looks like in action. So the main gist with this was to try and create a system that used a very cheap projector system, and that projector system was very easy to separate and split off from the ship. So this is using a similar sort of welder layout to my SAM site, and what that means is you've got some very small, very cheap projectiles. They just consist of a merge block and then 9 blocks of heavy armour. And you would imagine that because of that, they don't do that much damage, and you'd be very surprised. I've actually set these things up with 2 different warhead payloads. So on 8 and 9 you have the option, when you're printing your ammo, to either print an explosive load or to print the heavy armour load. And you'll find that the heavy armour does pretty much the same amount of damage, but without the inherent weakness that it's explosive and it's sitting in the front of your ship, and so at any point you could blow yourself up just as easily as you could blow up the enemy. So I'm really pleased with how that heavy armour's worked out, and I think that's going to be very much a theme of these bombers. They're going to be geared towards being super cheap, shooting super cheap projectiles, but then focused very much on the idea of making sure those projectiles are usable in a combat scenario, really work in a combat scenario. So as you can see here, these projectiles have 2 benefits. First of all, they do a decent amount of damage, but also they have the added benefit of drawing the turret's fire away from you, but they're made of heavy armour, so the turrets don't really do a huge amount to them, especially not in time to prevent the warheads, whatever you want to call these projectiles, from hitting the target. And when they do hit the target, as we've already said, it does a remarkable amount of damage. And it means that you can drive this bomber in a very sort of easy fashion where you fly off, print up whatever projectile you want for this particular attack run, and then swoop through past the target, releasing the projectiles as you come in. The projectiles are drawing all the fire away from you, allowing you to escape and get ready for the next run. So to try and help with this, I've included a kind of launch system, a version 1 launch system on these. And basically it's a series of timers that when you press 2 to launch, it's going to separate the merge blocks, turn off the projectors, turn everything off, and then activate some thrusters on the front of the ship to slow you down, forcibly separating these projectiles from the craft, getting them a bit clear, and then activating your thrusters again, and as soon as they do, you can swoop off and get away. Now this works slightly better on the modded one than it does on the vanilla one, simply due to the strength of the thrusters. But it's that sort of idea. I want to try and make these projectiles really usable, and not the sort of thing where they come with their own intrinsic weaknesses as well. I have to mention, if you do try out the explosive variant of the warhead, and both of these ships are going to be on the workshop, so go and have a look if you want to find out how things go together, or just try them. They are quite good fun. The explosive version is a bit dangerous. You have just as much chance of blowing yourself up as you do blowing up the enemy, especially if there's incoming fire. So I'm really pleased with how well these heavy armor versions work, and I'm pretty pleased overall with the performance of this craft. It's not an expensive craft to make, it's not shooting expensive projectiles, and yet, as you can see, it's pretty effective against both light and heavy armored targets, and it's reasonably difficult to hit. You know, it's got a combat style that works very, very nicely with how turrets work in this game, for example. It does mean that, unlike a fighter where you have to spend quite a lot of time hanging around the target in order to do any damage, all the damage here is dealt in a very short period of time, and then you're off, you're gone again. Now, the final thing I'll mention before I wrap this up, because I was a bit remiss last time in not doing this, is just show you quickly how I put the thing together. So here's one where I've chopped the top and the bottom off, so you can see actually what's inside the ship, and you can see how the projector setup's made, and this is what I meant by it being like the SAM site one. It's this idea of having the welder pointing directly at the back of the merge block in front of it. And it gives it a range of 2 blocks. So these blocks here, that's as far out as you can build. That's as far out as the welders will project. But it does mean that these really simple projectiles are pretty straightforward to put together. You have a merge block there, and then on top of that merge block you put whatever you want your payload to be. In this case, heavy armor, but it could be pretty much anything else you want. And then as we go back, all you really get in the rest of this is a bunch of conveyors set up to try and make sure that all of these things connect together, because of course welders got the big doors on the back of them, really annoying. So just about managed to space it all in here, and it meant that some of the connections are a little bit dodgy, like this one coming out here that sort of loops round to the reactor. Looks a bit weird, but hey, if it all fits in that small space, it all fits in that small space. And it does mean it's got a decent amount of cargo capacity, and it's got a decent amount of power for the engines, and then everything else is kind of tucked into the wing. So you can see the timers there, and hopefully, I can't quite get an angle, but trust me, there are a whole bunch of gyros in these wings as well, because I do like to try and fill up dead space, the space that you wouldn't have anything else in, with gyros. It seems to be the best place to put that, rather than try and worry about having somewhere specific to put it together. And then finally we've got 2 projectors. That just enables us to really quickly switch ammo loadouts. So when you press 8 to load, you've got 8 presses your AP ammo, 9 does your explosive ammo, and when you press that it will turn on the relevant projector, do all the welding, and then turn everything off again. So you're ready to fire, and that whole process, even in survival, takes about 10 seconds. In creative, it takes about a second. So this can be reloaded and fired again really quite quickly. You can just get out of that 800 meter turret range, set yourself up for the next attack run. And that's about it. There are some timers involved with this, of course. I would advise you go and check them out yourself on the workshop, because it's a little bit easier to understand by looking, but as you can see, it's a relatively simple one. These explosive and AP ammo just trigger the projectors, and then starts this sort of generic launch timer sequence. And this launch timer sequence is what I was telling you about, turning off the forwards thrust, turning on some brakes to slow us down a little bit to allow us to separate, and then of course the next one just reverses that process. And the welding thing is even more simple. Merge blocks on, welders on, start the next timer, welders off, projectors off, so it looks nice and neat. So there you go guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know what you think of the sort of slightly different style of the video with the action footage in the background. If you did like it, please hit like, please hit subscribe, it does really help me in the channel out. And if you didn't like it, or there are some things you'd change on this ship, and of course, don't forget about that name as well, hit me up in the comments below and let me know what I could change, how I could improve to make these videos more fun for you. So thanks a lot for watching guys, and I will catch you next time.